displacement within countries and some cross-border. So just to give you, to make it a bit more practical, South Sudan is the world's newest nation. I was there just last month. It's a population of 10 million people. 99% of them voted for independence from Sudan 3 years ago. But now there's conflict within the ruling elite, broke out into armed conflict in January. Over 10,000 people have been killed, including 2 of our own staff.
Right.
Because most of our staff are recruited from local people. We're not sending, most of the people are not Western aid workers driving around in Toyotas. I mean, it's a locally employed population. And so what we see in that country is suddenly a desperate humanitarian need. Because of the conflict, there's no crop planting. Because there's no crop planting, the UN says there's danger of famine. So you've gone from the confidence of the world's newest nation 3 years ago to the prospect of famine affecting between 4 and 7 million people within 6 months. And that's what calls for international humanitarian help of a systematic kind.
Mm-hmm. So of the conflict you listed in the difficult band all the way from Mali to Somalia, South Sudan, which one do you see as the most toxic and most likely to explode?
I mean, look, for every individual we serve, it's their own conflicts that are the most toxic. So the temptation is to think, well, Central African Republic's a small place, it's 4 million people, you can't choose that as the most important, but actually Muslim population there was 13%, 11 of that 13% have been driven out of the country.
Right.
So it's pretty toxic for them. Equally, Democratic Republic of Congo, bordering Rwanda, so 20 years ago was in the headlines for all the wrong reasons, country of 70 million people. In the eastern part of the country, you've got over 1 million internally displaced. They've been displaced for 10, 15 years. How can anyone say that they're not the priority? So in a way, for me, as the leader of a humanitarian organization, which is significantly dependent on government funds,
right.
Funds from the US government, but also funds from the European governments, as well as a small amount of public philanthropy, of private philanthropy from individuals, which of course we want to raise. I'm someone who has to look to the big donors for the big programs. I look to my private donors for the innovation funds that I need to develop the next wave of humanitarian intervention, of humanitarian ideas. But for the big donors, what I'm saying to them is, don't forget those that aren't in the headlines. Don't think short term, and think about programs that cover, that break out of the conventional silos. Let me give you an example of that. A lot of the people we're helping are suffering from severe malnutrition, often kids. But actually the answer to malnutrition over anything more than a few weeks has got to be more than the plump